Civility in politics. Everyone seeks it. Will Tucson find it?
Hopefully in the future, with events such as this, more people of diverse points of view will come and participate.
And what will the minimum wage increase next month mean for one local nonprofit?
We're also taking the opportunity to retrain our staff, and we'll probably be doing some restructuring.
Plus, firefighting overseas, the economic outlook for 2017, and remembering the attack on Pearl Harbor. This is Metro Week. Hi, I'm Andrea Kelly. Thanks for joining us. The search for civility continues with efforts throughout the metro area to get people talking. We'll visit one such effort after a look at the week's top news from the Arizona Public Media Newsroom. Civility in politics seems almost an oxymoron these days, yet efforts to reestablish civility continue, including one in Tucson this week that drew 200 people, surprising the organizers.
We had no idea when we came up with this idea if we'd have anyone even show up. So it's really thrilling to see a packed room of people who really want to invest some time on starting this important dialogue of healing. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Elected officials from Tucson Unified School District, the legislature, Sahuarita Town Council, and 2 radio talk show hosts joined the event. Tucson City Councilman Steve Kozachik organized the event with Our Family Services. They shared thoughts on the election cycle and then called on everyone else to practice respectful conversation, starting with their emotional responses to the election.
I can't believe how wrong I was. I went to bed early on election night, absolutely positive that Hillary was going to win. That it couldn't, how could it possibly not happen? And then so the next morning when we were all crying at work, I was just pretty, well, I'm scared, and I also don't want to watch the news, but I can't believe how wrong I was. You know, I missed something.
It's easy for me to write off the people on the other side, but I was really amazed by the people that I thought I was allied with, and my feelings about that. I felt a broadening of my perspective by that surprise.
I was also disappointed from the folks that I agree with that we did not engage people that we disagree with or who come from a different point of view more fully and allowed their own fear and anger to be acknowledged and just kind of writing them off. I was disappointed with our lack of intention for doing that, and I think that had consequences politically for doing that.
And then they discussed the future.
What would I like to do to create the community I want to live in?
First thing that strikes me is to not depend on our leaders to get us out of this. I would like for them to set a tone, yes, and to be forthright and transparent. And because one of the reasons people do all this negative stuff is it works. Negative ads work, and a lot of the negativity stuff works in the short term. It doesn't do much for building a community or strengthening a democracy, but it might help people get elected. But, I think we need to be an engaged electorate, an engaged community that goes beyond an election, and we need to hold people accountable.
I agree that we are the leaders of our community, and we need to accept the responsibility for that, and we need to draw others with us to become active leaders in our community.
With that sound of a chime, the conversations wrapped up. Each group reported what it came up with, including suggestions for everyone and for community leaders.
To govern in a nonpartisan manner, to reach others who are unaware of community efforts and come together, and to have ongoing community dialogue across the city.
To create a community we want to live in, we should be focusing on being political by volunteering, understanding the issues that surround us, engaging people differently, and starting at the grassroots, getting involved in neighborhood associations where community starts, city council meetings, etc. We want leaders to take us forward by focusing on respect, by being civil, by rising above their own issues to see the community needs.
After it was over, they reflected on the experience.
At our table, we had people who were in the main in agreement with how we were all feeling. So we didn't get to engage with people who were feeling different than we very much. But nevertheless, I think it's a very valuable, I think it's critical actually that we come together, and hopefully in the future with events such as this, more people of diverse points of view will come and participate.
This could make some steps in our community, and of course our community is not the national stage, it's our community. But right now I also have to be real that there are some really heavy feelings, and I don't think we need to squash them down. I think we need to also come together in groups where we agree with each other and say what needs to be said about how much we've been hurt.
The people at this table said it's important to talk to those with whom they don't agree.
I think within neighborhoods is a good idea. We have all different kinds of viewpoints right on the street where we live, and I know that talking to our various neighbors is some place where we feel like we can start.
In January, the minimum wage in Arizona will rise to $10 an hour. Voters approved the increase last month, and it's the first of several increases until 2020. I visited a Goodwill store in Tucson to find out how it will affect the organization. Judith, how many people work at Goodwill in Southern Arizona, and how many of those are minimum wage paid?
So Goodwill currently supports 518 employees here in Southern Arizona, and we have 280 people who are going to be getting a wage increase on January 1st.
So who are they? Who works at Goodwill?
So we have different levels of jobs, right? So we've got a lot of employees in our retail stores, and that's where the majority of our hourly employees work. We also have donation attendants, we have a transportation fleet, we have our HR departments, our program services, mission services. So there's a lot of people in our organization.
They, I'm sure, are looking forward to this minimum wage increase. What are you hearing from them?
We're going to be meeting with our employees this December, talking to them about what the minimum wage increase looks like for our organization. I'm sure a lot of them are really excited. What we're excited about is that minimum wage earners are going to be able to earn more, and hopefully they'll be able to do more with what they're earning. And in the end, if the increase allows them to put them on a path to economic independence, like that's a good thing for our employees.
So what are you doing to prepare as a company for that increase?
So to prepare for the minimum wage increase, what we're doing is, like we continue to do, to maximize the value of that donation. We owe it to our donors really to make sure that we can get a fair value for the donations that they give us. On top of that, we're also taking the opportunity to retrain our staff, and we'll probably be doing some restructuring. So, you know, we're always looking at areas where we can save on expenses, and like any other organization that's going to be managing this minimum wage increase, we'll adjust.
So restructuring, does that mean that there will be jobs, the number of jobs will be reduced, or people might lose their jobs?
We are going to be able to move some people to other positions, but definitely, you know, nothing is really off the table when it comes to being able to afford an increase in the wages. But we are going to be meeting with all of our employees this month. So any further details, I think I'd like to keep that for right now.
Are they expressing any concerns or excitement about getting paid more or losing a job?
I think a lot of people are excited to get that wage increase, and what we're really proud to be able to say is that we're not reducing our hours. Our hourly employees are still going to be able to work the 40 hours a week, and we're still going to be able to offer them the same level of benefits that we've had in the past. So it's going to be the paid time off, sick leave, retirement plan, health insurance. So we're excited that we can still offer that on top of the stability of a 40-hour work week.
And has Goodwill done any consulting with other nonprofits or for-profit organizations as you figure out how to navigate this?
I know that we've reached out to other Goodwill regions to see how they're managing what they're doing for a minimum wage increase. There are 3 regions here in Arizona, and so all of us are going to be experiencing, you know, the minimum wage increase here in Arizona. So we're really just going to be doing our best. We want to keep as many people employed in Southern Arizona as possible. That is our mission. Our jobs are our mission, and so we will do our best to be able to do that.
And then pricing, you said getting the best value for the donations. Does that mean prices could be going up? Customers might see some changes?
They may see some changes, but very small changes.
On the scale of?
I really can't say what that's going to look like. We're looking at all the options that's available for us, and we're just hoping that the community will continue to support us with the donations, because, you know, our retail revenue makes up 96%, and with that retail revenue, we're supporting not only our families but also the programs that we're able to offer some really important services.
What are some of those programs?
So we actually have 5 adult programs, 5 youth programs, including an academic services program. They mostly center around workforce development. So our youth are learning to come to work on time, what to wear to work, what's appropriate interactions in a workplace environment. Our adults, they can come into our job connection centers, have access to technology like the internet, a computer to do online job searches and online applications. Those types of services are funded by our retail revenue.
How long do you think it's going to take to sort of stabilize and figure out what this will mean after it begins in January?
Ultimately, we'll find out what that real impact to our organization is after maybe a couple of months after it's in effect in January. We're just hoping that we are able to keep the level that we're at right now, and we're really very hopeful.
Randy Ogden's time as chief of the Mount Lemmon Fire District is coming to a close. He's retiring after spending a decade in charge of the district and more than 30 years with the Tucson Fire Department. In his final weeks on the job, Ogden found himself back on a fire engine on the other side of the world. He was among the international crews of firefighters who traveled to Israel to fight an outbreak of fires near some of the country's most populated cities. Zach Ziegler asked him to share his experience.
Randy, thanks for joining us today. Tell me a bit about your recent trip to Israel, what the situation was over there with the fires.
It was a program that I actually had been over there in September doing training on learning how the Israeli fire service uses their equipment and their different techniques. And I just had no idea that I'd be going back so soon as a firefighter. Last week and the week before, they had something like 4,000 arson fires, and it completely overwhelmed the system that Israel had to fight fires. And so they called the United States and asked to deploy 40 of us. and to come over and help, either backfill the stations or actually go out and help them fight fires. Fortunately, they also had 15 countries bring in aviation, which helped control some of the fires. But it was a very unrealistic experience for sure.
This is a pre-existing relationship that the fire associations around here in Tucson have had with the Israeli firefighters, right?
It really is, and it's kind of different. It started out with the Greater Tucson Fire Foundation, and it was a partnership that was called Firefighters Beyond Borders. And they sent a contingent of Tucson firefighters over to Israel, really, to learn how to deal with terrorist events and the violence and the things that they do that America really doesn't. And as an offset of that, the Israeli government sent over a group of Israeli officials. It was their fire operations commissioner, their person that runs their medical response, the disaster response, and someone from the urban search and rescue, a major from the Israeli military, to come over. And they actually spent a week up on Mount Lemmon learning how to do wildland fires and how to work with aviation and do interagency cooperation. The Israeli government run all of fire service, so they're not individual departments.
You got a chance to be back on a truck while you were in Israel. Tell me a bit about the experience, what it was like actually being over there working all of these fires. We heard about thousands of people evacuated. It was really quite a situation.
It really was, and I have to take my hat off to the Israelis. They were working 4,000 arson fires, and at one point they evacuated 50 to 60,000 people from the Haifa area, and they had no fatalities. You know, the whole country was on fire at one point, and the winds were just horrendous. We were talking to the group as we were flying back, and the fire service, the people in Israel were so gracious and so grateful and so welcoming to us. And you could really take a fire station anywhere in the world and put it in another country, and it's the same group of people. You know, they're in it to help people. The Israelis are brave, compassionate, and very dedicated. And it's just like that in any fire station in the United States.
You mentioned that kind of almost a brotherhood of firefighters, and you even got some of that treatment. We can see you're actually wearing the firefighter wings from Israel there. You're a full-fledged firefighter in Israel now.
I got certified as a firefighter the first time I went over in September. Yeah, it was quite an ordeal. It was interesting, the first night we flew in, and it took us 33 hours to get there. When we first got to the fire station up in Haifa, in that area, and the firefighters had been working 96 hours straight. They wanted to give us their beds because they were afraid that we would have jet lag. I mean, that's the kind of personalities they had.
How was the experience over there? Was it a lot of wildland firefighting? Was it getting into urban interface fires? What exactly was it that was going on?
It was all of it. It was wildland, forest, and then urban interface, and then a lot of structures. One night in Jerusalem, I went to 3 house fires and 1 5-story apartment complex fire. So it was just arson, fire after fire after fire. And you would put them out and there'd be another one that came up. So it was a challenge. It took all of our experience and skill to keep up with it.
And how did it differ from working fires here in the U.S.?
I think there's an undercurrent of danger that we're not used to. We started to experience it after 9/11, when first responders became a target. To give you an example, when the firefighters in Israel graduate, they're issued a hat. And it looks like our baseball caps, but it's made out of plastic because they get rocks thrown at them. They run calls in the Arab settlements. They run calls in the Orthodox towns. They run calls all over, involving all different religions and all different walks of life. And sometimes they're not as popular as firefighters are in the United States.
Talking about all walks of life, all religions, this really was an international effort. U.S. firefighters weren't the only ones to travel over there.
No, I met Croatian, Greek, Russian, Cyprus firefighters. I mean, they were from all over the world. It was really nice to see all the politics, all the religious, all the biases put aside for a common goal of just saving the country. And that does your heart good. It really does.
Thank you very much for joining us here in the studio today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
The University of Arizona Eller College of Management's economic forecast for 2017 is out. For the report, economist George Hammond crunches the numbers and interprets what they mean. We'll hear from him after a preview of his findings. Tucson can expect faster economic growth in the next 2 years. That's driven in part by job growth more than doubling from 2015, when it was just about 0.5%. It's expected to reach 2% by 2018. Top growth sectors will be health and education, leisure and hospitality, and professional and business services. Others also are expected to grow, but at lesser rates. Income growth at a little more than 2% is forecast in Arizona. So what does this tell us about our economy?
Overall, the outlook for the Tucson economy is positive. I think we'll continue to grow if the national economy continues to expand. I think we've got the capacity to actually grow faster over the next couple of years than we have over the past couple of years.
You mentioned that faster growth, and actually some of the wording in your report is that the growth will be the fastest pace since 2012. Why is it picking up now and say not sooner?
There are a couple of factors that are driving what's going on. You want to keep in mind that the Tucson economy is very heavily reliant on government activity, and that's been holding us back over the past 3 or 4 years. And that fiscal drag, as we call it, has gradually dissipated, and it's now pretty much gone. And that frees us up to grow at a faster pace. In addition, I think the recent announcements of jobs coming at Caterpillar, Raytheon, Vector Space Systems will all contribute as well. So we're well positioned to grow faster over the next couple of years because some of the things that have been holding us back are not going to hold us back anymore.
In your list of industries that are going to be growing maybe faster or adding more jobs by the numbers than others, what can we learn from the fact that those specific industries are growing?
Well, you want to keep in mind that healthcare is a big industry. It's a growing industry nationally across the state, and it's growing in Tucson as well. And as the demographic aging, the retirement of the baby boom generation, the aging of the baby boom generation, that's all spurring growth in healthcare. We're also seeing a number of other industries that I think will grow over the next couple of years: trade, transportation, utilities, leisure and hospitality, even government will grow. And also, as I mentioned, I think manufacturing jobs are going to grow over the next couple of years, and that's really good to see from the perspective of overall income growth, because those manufacturing jobs are relatively high-paying jobs here in the local economy.
When the minimum wage rises in January in Arizona as a whole, what will that do, or how does that play a role in your economic outlook for next year?
Well, I think that can provide a modest boost to overall wage and income growth. And that, wage and income growth has been painfully slow since the Great Recession ended about 2009, 2010. I think that'll help a little bit, but it's really not the major factor. What's really going to boost our wage and income growth as we look forward over the next couple of years is going to be that continued job growth. And that's going to help to take up the slack, the labor slack that we've been struggling with over the past couple of years. And that'll get our unemployment rate down to the national rate or even below the national rate. And that's really going to be the juice that's going to push that wage growth faster. And that's going to drive income growth faster, and that will turn into all kinds of good things in terms of retail sales, growth in our tax base, and even growth in the housing market.
Someone looking for a job today should see your report as good news?
They should see it as good news. There's a very good chance that we'll see accelerating job growth over the next couple of years, and that means more opportunities.
Turning now to the economic challenges, the outlook is not great for all industries, and the job growth we do see comes after several years when Tucson consistently trailed the U.S. in job creation. Arizona as a whole continues to lag the country on what economists call educational attainment. That's how many people have bachelor's degrees. It affects wages, taxes, and other economic indicators. and wages are not projected to skyrocket. In the Tucson area, they remain below the national average and are still below other Arizona cities. I asked George Hammond to explain why local wages aren't going up.
Well, local wages are not growing faster because we're still struggling with the hangover from the Great Recession. You want to keep in mind that that hit Arizona, Phoenix, Tucson harder than it did the national economy, and we're still struggling to kind of take up that slack in the local labor market. And we've made progress. The unemployment rates have been coming down, but there's still a little bit of work to do. I think that work will happen over the next year or so, and that will really start to boost our overall wage growth, and that will help to drive income growth as well.
Those job seekers that I mentioned, which industries should they not be looking to? Which industries are growing really slowly or actually losing jobs?
Well, I think the one sector that to keep an eye on as we look forward over the next couple of years is the kind of the mining sector. We do have a large copper mine here in the county that began a curtailment of activity late last year, early this year, and they're struggling with low copper prices. So that'll be a sector that I don't think will grow very rapidly. There'll be others that I think will either be roughly stable, maybe decline a little bit, maybe grow a little bit. That'll be a little bit slower. But by and large, the sectors to look to are service providing sectors like professional and business services. So that will be accountants, lawyers, management consultants, computer scientists, engineers. The call center sector, I think, will see some growth, and particularly in healthcare will be the major driver of job growth going forward. So that's doctors, nurses, a wide variety of occupations related to the health.
What about the housing market? What are we anticipating for the next year or so?
Housing permits are up over where we were at this point last year.
Those are permits to build new houses?
Those are permits to build new houses, both single family and multifamily. So they're up a little bit so far this year, but what we're noticing is that most of that strength was early in the year, and as we've gone through the year, things have gotten a little bit weaker. So I think we're going to end up a tiny bit stronger in 2016 than 2015. That's a sector that's still rebounding slowly. And what's driving that is really slow population growth. We're adding residents, but it's at a pretty slow pace compared to what we're used to and what we've seen in previous recoveries. And until that population growth really accelerates, the housing sector is going to drag along, getting a little bit better each year, but no major improvements.
So as that job growth continues, we might see some population growth. They're all interrelated? Exactly.
Think of job growth as driving migration into the region. We're also expecting to see increased residential mobility really across all states in the U.S. So as people start to move around across states more, Arizona's an attractive place, Tucson's an attractive place, particularly when job growth picks up, and that means we'll attract more migrants moving into the state, and that will drive that population growth faster, and that will translate into more vigorous activity in the housing sector.
George Hammond, thanks for coming in and breaking down your numbers for us.
Thank you.
Wednesday marked the 75th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor and the United States entrance into World War II. The University of Arizona unveiled a memorial to those who lost their lives on the USS Arizona that day. AZPM's photojournalist Sandra Westall brings us this look at the ceremony last weekend.
The morning of December 7th was like any other leisurely and balmy Sunday in Pearl Harbor, until the deafening sounds of explosions were all that could be heard. It is truly an honor to be able to recognize the fallen American heroes from the attack on Pearl Harbor 75 years ago and pay tribute to those who gave their lives that day.
James Randolph Van Horn, able seaman, U.S. Navy, Tucson. George Sanford Hallowell, coxswain, U.S. Navy, Phoenix. And James Joseph Murphy, seaman first class, U.S. Navy, Bisbee.
The University of Arizona has a unique bond and relationship with Pearl Harbor, as the famed battleship USS Arizona and its salvage remains now act as a memorial for the many sailors our nation lost that day. Think of the thousands of stories that will never be told. The letters home never finished. The deck watches never turned over. The homecomings never enjoyed.
That's it for us. Next week, we'll look at a new program to help homeless people find work here in the Tucson area. Thanks for watching.